I met a crew that I started to sell weed to that were alcoholics. They were total binge drinkers, and I had never had binge drinking friends before. I only had pothead friends. So when I started to hang out with these guys, I would smoke a lot of weed, but I would also binge drink. Then I downhill skateboarded one night, totally hypomanic on alcohol and cocaine. My trucks were way too loose on my skateboard, and so I flew off my board going 30 miles an hour down a really steep hill, flew like Superman, and I fractured my wrist, my left hand, and I'm left-handed, my scaphoid, in fact. So for the next 3 months, Christina, I had to wear a Velcro splint. So that the good part was I could take it off and take a shower, wash it off and scratch it. But the bad part was a few things. Number one, I could not surf. Number two, I could not exercise except for like walk or jog if I wanted to.
So no way to get your adrenaline going.
No way to get my adrenaline going. When I was used to surfing and working out a lot, actually, even when I sold weed and even when I binge drank, I would still get lots of exercise and I would still. So the exercise and the marijuana, I think, was halting me from advancing in alcoholism.
Sure.
Now, this is the trippy part, Christina. So I couldn't exercise, I couldn't surf, but I also could not play guitar. And that was my creative outlet. So, empathic, intuitive, very creatively focused person that needs to express creativity, needs to use my physical body. So I could not do those things. The worst part was that when I smoked marijuana, when I had this fractured scaphoid and the splint on, was that it made my wrist hurt. It actually, instead of killing the pain, there was no pain. Then I would smoke weed and it would hurt and it would make me stress out and focus on my wrist, that I couldn't shave, that I couldn't eat with my left hand, that I couldn't surf, that I couldn't play guitar. I couldn't even make love to my girlfriend and, tip normally. So it was just really, and back then I was really weak. I was a very weak-minded person that I just didn't have a lot strong psychological skills. So I started to drink a bunch. And then the weed, since the weed was having negative actions like that, those negative effects, I just stopped smoking weed. And I replaced the surfing, the weed, the guitar, all that stuff with alcohol. Because I could do that with my right hand. I could drink as much alcohol as I wanted with no negative consequences, at least at the beginning. Yeah, negative consequences to my brain and body, but I didn't see those. They were out of sight and out of mind, and I didn't know.
That's right.
Yeah, so I
early stage addiction. It was still working, but you'd lost all your other coping mechanisms and all your other ways of having fun and relaxing and getting your endorphins running and getting your adrenaline running and feeling alive.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm also extremely genetically wired for alcoholism as well. I've had many, on both my relatives on my mom's side and on my dad's side. Both my mom and my dad, they never got addicted to alcohol or anything close to it, but my grandparents did, and some aunts and uncles did, and to mental health issues and early death from addiction, the whole nine. So I was biologically, genetically, really predisposed. And I also, I did know that I was hypoglycemic too, but I didn't know it had any relationship with alcohol or addiction or anything like that. But I was also severely hypoglycemic. I had such bad reactive hypoglycemia. And even when I was in high school, I just ate a lot of really, really simple carbs and barely any protein. And my nutrition was horrible when I got into drinking.
Yeah.
I didn't
Set up. You had a starving brain.
I had a starving brain. And so then I became really quickly from binge drinking, alcohol, recreational use to binge use to abuse. And then really quickly, actually, I became physiologically and psychologically dependent. And alcohol was my everything. It was my food, my water, my safety. It was like, babies have their babas, 40 ounces of cold Budweiser. That was my baba.
Hmm.
And yeah, then it graduated from, so I went to AA. My parents and some other people said, you got to go to AA. That's the only way to do it. And so I went to AA, and I actually did pretty good at the beginning because I was also facing a felony arraignment. I had been raided by the DEA. So, because I got sloppy as an alcoholic drug dealer. And then I got busted. The DEA had a search warrant, and I went to jail, but luckily I just got probation. But one thing my lawyer had recommended was to start going to AA meetings and do 90 and 90 days and get signatures to prove that I was at the meetings. And thus, he would be able to show the judge when it came time to my felony arraignment that I was doing work already. It's my first time ever getting in trouble with the law. And so, yeah, that all worked out. And I did have the pink cloud phenomenon that they talk about in early recovery. And I did find a sponsor, and I did work the steps. Um, and I was living with my parents at the time, and it seemed like things were going to be good. Problem was, is once my court case was over and I got probation, then I stopped going to the meetings. And then
Hmm.
about a month later, I thought I could control drinking again. And so really, that was when I was 24, and I didn't get better until I was 32. So for those next 8 years, I was addicted to alcohol on and off, mostly on. And I would often black out. I would often get arrested. I have a grand total of 3 DUIs in 2 different states and 3 drunken publics in one state, plus the felony charge. It's like crazy. Once I got arrested once, then all of a sudden it was like I was a magnet to go into
Hmm.
jail, and I couldn't stay out. And so I would go to AA, and I would have some moderate to relative success with it. I never full measured it ever again. I only full measured it at the very first time I tried. So I half measured, so I gave it half-ass attempts. I would just go to meetings. I wouldn't get a sponsor or work with a sponsor. And I didn't want to. I didn't resonate with it. I didn't want to go there for the rest of my life. And so I would try alcohol alternatives, Valium, Vicodin, a combination of Soma, a Percocet, and an Ativan. I was always afraid of pharmaceuticals until the age of about 22, 23. And then I
Hmm.
tried Valium, and I liked it. And then I tried a Vicodin, and I liked it. And I realized that benzodiazepines and opioid RX pills that weren't prescribed to me, but that I would purchase illegally and use, I realized that I didn't know any of the neurotransmission back then. I didn't know that all these are doing is plugging into receptors in our brains and boosting
Right.
neurochemicals we already make. But I did know that the combination of opioids and benzos made me feel wonderful, even better than alcohol alone. And I would not black out, and I would not wake up hungover, and
Yep.
I would not get arrested. I would not black out and do stupid things. It made me more creative, more empathic, more compassionate, more intelligent, more resilient, more adaptable, more energized, a better human being, more thoughtful of others. It made me Superman. It gave me
Uh, uh-huh.
either just opioids pretty much did that too, but opioids and benzos was
Sure.
that turned into heaven.
And they gave you enough buffering that you weren't quite so raw to the world.
Yes, it gave me the protective barrier.
Cocoon.
It gave me an endorphin, and I didn't know it at the time, but it gave me a strong endorphin shield. The opioids and the alcohol both did. An
Yeah.
endorphin shield that helped to mitigate and really reduce or even prevent completely psychological and physical distress and pain,
Yeah.
emotional pain. It killed all those emotions and numbed them and made me simultaneously euphoric versus I had generalized anxiety that was moderate and social anxiety, which was severe a lot of the time. And so it also completely turned off those. So it
Mhm.
optimized my brain and it filled in my
Sure.
missing brain chemicals that I needed to feel good. And it seemed like other people didn't need that. And that was kind of a bummer, but I realized, okay, I need at least weed or alcohol or something. So for all those years, Christina, there was very little time that I ever was completely sober off everything. I would not drink, but I would do weed and Valium, or I would not drink, but I would do a bunch of different pills, or I would not do anything but Valium. So I tried
Mm.
all these different rules, all these different, kind of putting rules on myself, putting limits on myself. And it always just ended me back to like full blown severe addiction to alcohol, which was crippling to me. At the very end of the addiction, so never having any long term or really even moderate success, I just had periods of abstinence, never really any substantial recovery. I never had any accountability really that was strong ever again, or a social support system because all my friends drank.
Yeah.
That was my main issue was when I wasn't drinking, I would still hang out with my friends who all not only drank, but were binge drinkers uh,
Hmm.
several times a week. So sometimes I would stay alcohol free, but a lot of the times I would cave into peer pressure, or I would just, through my own volition, my own will, I would be missing out, FOMO, fear of missing out. I would be in the
Hmm.
moment, literally feeling like I was missing out. And so I wanted to drink so I could join in and not miss
Right.
out, be a
Right.
part of. I wanted to be a part of that because big part of it is the connection too. My family saved my life. It was a combination too of extended family even. So my mom knew the nutrition. The nutrition she was feeding me when I was going through post-acute withdrawal. She
Yeah.
was feeding me steamed brown rice and broccoli and cauliflower and protein and like this melted organic raw cheddar cheese, grilled organic chicken breast and fish and salmon
Yeah.
and protein shakes. And so she knew that really well. So did my dad. And she would make me herb tea with all these sedative herbs that I had no idea, but she was giving me stuff that was boosting my GABA and my serotonin and my dopamine. And then, so that was all going on. I was taking herbs, teas, liquid extracts of herbs, but not in alcohol tincture extract, but glycerin
Right.
extract. Then also, my brother from another mother, my older brother, Tom Finch, is my dad's son. He was birthed by another woman before my dad met my mom. And so he's my brother from another mother. And that mother of my brother sent me two supplements from Apex Energetics, Dopatone, which had neuronutrients to boost dopamine and
Yeah.
endorphins, dynorphins, and enkephalins. And then another one, Gabatone, which had
Yeah.
neuronutrients to boost
And of course,
GABA.
Apex is a wonderful company.
Yeah, and I had no idea that there were amino acids that increased the same neurotransmitters that drugs do. Then I started to learn that pretty early on too. But yes, Christina, my parents saved my life in more ways than one. And my brother from another mother, both he and his mother, are also heavily responsible for my recovery because as soon as I started to take the neuronutrients that started to resupply my brain quickly with healthy neurotransmission balance, from the very first day, and especially the second day I was taking that combination,
Uh-huh.
things went away. And then I started to feel comfortable in my own skin. Then my anxiety went away. And then because the Gabatone, I was taking like 70 to 80, up to 100 milligrams a day of lithium orotate. So I was taking not just neurotransmitter boosting supplements for dopamine, endorphins, and GABA and serotonin, but also lithium orotate was stabilizing my mood and creating neurogenesis, increasing my BDNF, brain derived neurotrophic factor, to regrow my prefrontal cortex, insight, willpower, behavior regulation modification, volition area. my mood became extremely stabilized, grounded, and I was in equanimity. And I started to work out and lift weights and exercise, and the rest is history. So I became a strategic intervention coach, certified, which is Tony Robbins, the type of coaching that he does in his coach training program. Worked in treatment, saw the almost 100% failure rates, saw the huge burnout rates of the counselors, of the doctors, of the nurses, saw how much paperwork there is, how much regulations, and also my scope of practice and my ethics. I can only talk about certain things AOD counseling can do. So I didn't have the ability to talk about nutrition or amino acid therapy or anything like that. But ultimately, that led me that hunger to actually help people holistically versus just give them medication and counseling, or the psycho, social, and spiritual pillars only. Or at the place I was working at long term, we were just doing straight up psychosocial, and it was really ineffective.